This interview was on May 6th. Welcome to the Polytopian Interviewer, where I interview people on their experiences and views on the Polytopia Discord community. I have Innofunni with me today. How are you?
I'm well.
How did you first get into the Polytopia Discord?
Pretty sure most of us remember this because Moonrise wasn't too long ago. Before Moonrise, when you had to enter someone's code like that, long jumbled stream of letters and numbers, kind of a headache, to be honest. I would just be going around on the internet, going to Reddit, which I don't use for anything else. I haven't used since. Just try to find people to play, and I'm like, there's gotta be a better way. And that's when I found the Polytopia Discord, which was much, much better. Very thankful about that.
Yeah, that's how I first started. I ended up with 80 plus people, and then when most of them decided to play a random game with me, oh boy. You're in the Polymaster server. Could you give us an overview of how that works?
Polymasters is kind of interesting. I'm a lot less involved there than I am on Polychamps or even Polylive. I was just handed the invite and they asked me if I wanted to play, and I said, okay, sure. So I can only really give my experience, what has been playing there, which has been mostly filling out spreadsheets. It seems like the games there are taken a lot more seriously than the kinds of casual games, or at least 1v1s I do on main, which makes sense. It's a competitive league. So I lose a lot more there than on a random main game. It's still fun. If you get into your division chat, you can talk with everyone there. They've got it divided up so that it isn't like Joe Young versus 7 randoms, then he wins every game. It's set up based on skill level. The better you do, the more you can advance throughout there, season to season. Honestly, with like 8 people there, and most of it just being people like adding each other saying, hey, you forgot about this rule, or GG or something like that. It's still very competitive, nice in that aspect, but you're not going to be talking about games there, which is kind of why I like the team aspect of something like Poly Champions.
Polylive kind of has a similar premise then. You have people match up, though, most likely not in the same way of 2 people that are pretty competitive, pretty similar, but it's a live game.
I really like the live aspect. I guess not the reason I do poorly, that's completely my fault. I mean, I didn't even do poorly. I've won most of the games I've played for Polymasters this season. Just the live aspect, the quick decision making an event out of it. I like that a lot. It's fun to commentate those games. One of my favorite games that I've played was actually on there too. Maybe I'll get into that later though. They're kind of similar but different in a lot of ways that favor Polylive just because of the players that they get in there, the way that you can see them making decisions, the stuff you hear from game analysts, other commentators. If you're like really paying attention there and just tuning in a lot without even really playing, I think you'd become a lot better player. As a commentator myself, it's nice. It's a very casual kind of thing. You just gotta get the right mix of just memeing and joking around with like actually talking about the game. Because some of the early games where we tried to only talk about the game, you would just be left with dead silence for a while because there's absolutely nothing to say. Especially with the Quetzali mirrors that happened all the time early on.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like they're moving their defenders forward. One player has more cities, and there's only so many times you can state that in a new way. Before. So it's just nice to interact with the people watching live on the Discord, or like with your co-commentator. As for my refereeing, that's not really a thing. I do have the rule still, but That's just because they needed a referee for one game, and I volunteered to do it. Ever since then, I have not needed to be a referee, so I haven't.
Yeah, like me with a lot of roles originally. I'm like, I can't do all these things.
Yeah, it looked like they were kind of desperate for people to get everything operational and functioning. And it is a labor-intensive thing, but it's also been working out very well with all the people that they've got there. Maybe it was a little aggressive, but it certainly paid off. I'm really a big fan of what PolyLive is right now.
I'm impressed with how well it's been doing so far because their original goal was to be able to make quality YouTube content, and that's a lot of work. And of course, they're
Yeah.
still working on that as far as I know. So you'll be participating in the upcoming season then?
Yes. I don't know why I signed up, honestly, because I have a lot more fun just commentating than actually playing. I guess I have to before they start questioning me and my authority. The worst thing that can happen to you as a commentator, you just say something and then the entire chat just turns against you.
Yeah, I haven't commented a lot, but I've never had that problem because I've never had an audience that's interacting with me pointing out that's wrong. Kind of a sidetrack, I did a YouTube video of me versus myself, and I was the commentator, and I was commentating it live, and almost nobody was in the chat, which is understandable. So I didn't really have anyone correcting me. The funny part is I would have to correct myself then and go, oh, wait, nope, that's incorrect. So yeah,
Yeah.
commentating is tricky, but also fun. You mentioned you like Poly Champions more than Poly Live for the team aspect. Could you elaborate on why?
The 1v1s are nice, and if you are going to do a 1v1, I really like the way PolyLive does it with fast decision making. I don't want to get into a 1v1 with a clear spawn loss, spend the full 24 hours thinking about my turn without anyone else to talk it over with or anything. That just sounds like a nightmare. But when you're just looking over it with a team, it's just a lot more fun. I'm on the crawfish. I'm a shrimp right now. My first season, I joined for season 9, which has been going on for a while with the 2-month break that happened once Semanti was released.
The boat bugs?
Yeah. The Semanti update brought in all of those bugs and a few others. We've got a really good comms culture, at least, I mean, not for everybody. I'm sure not everybody would appreciate the way we do comms. For me, anyways, I love it. I'm a big fan. You're just able to talk to your teammates, send out your plan, go over stuff. Everybody understands what you're saying. You can speak quickly, really efficiently. They'll go over and offer suggestions. When you're building up your plan for your teammates, you're going to notice things that you might not have otherwise. Just going over, or at least stuff that I wouldn't do in 1v1s. I rarely ever do math or anything for a 1v1, but definitely in team games. On a personal bent, I guess, it's just made me a better player.
You're also a recruiter for the Craw. How do you recruit players?
I have not been a recruiter for very long. I have been recruiting players to join, scouting out draftable Novas and stuff, getting them interested in the team, looking for people who I'd like to join the team, but I only officially joined very recently. So for the last draft and obviously for this upcoming draft too. I've noticed most teams decided not to go draft anyone if you're on Polychamps, which as a team recruiter, I don't want anyone to take offense to this or anything, but I don't blame any teams for not picking up drafts. We had Ethald and Goulord, they were drafted. I think Trooper was as well, or maybe not. There's something around there. Something about that. And fully support those decisions. Good for those teams. After that, it makes sense that nobody else was drafted. This draft is looking to be a lot more interesting. I'm not going to get into any details about this draft specifically. Most of the time, the recruiting process is a lot like what I was doing before. There aren't any official guidelines that I have to do. The team just saw what I was doing, trying to get players on earlier, and they're like, yeah, go at it. You were doing a good job. So I've just been able to check out the draftable Novas. They are doing anything that interests me. Might ask them to do a recruiting game, which I actually think that Craw does recruiting games better than other teams, or at least the teams that had recruiting games with me. Recruiting games as 2v2s are not good, especially if you as the team recruiter are just going to play your turn without elaborating or asking anything. If you're just asking for the other person to wait and play their turn for them, which happened to me. But just playing as a 1v1 and asking them to explain their thought process and just talking to them about the game, I like that a lot because you've got to give them something. If you're just playing the game, sure, you can be really talented, but if you're not giving them any energy, you're not going to get anything from them. And they're not going to be excited about your team at all. I remember I played a recruiting game against Amanda. Surprise, surprise, she completely whooped me. I learned a lot in that game, which is like, hey, this seems like a team where I can learn stuff. That was nice for me. It also let me talk about the game. It's not like every single team in the league reached out to me for a recruiting game. They are a little more effort than a normal game. Or maybe that's just because I was really bad and no one wanted me on their team, so they didn't put any effort into my recruiting games. Anecdotes, so who knows?
It's interesting how people's experiences can be so different. Because for me, I lost most of my games, but I at least tried to communicate with all my teammates as a Nova, and that got Icky Karma's attention. That's how I ended up on the Cosmos Now Vikings.
Yeah, the Cosmos reached out to me for a recruiting game, which I was a fan of that. I was thinking about joining it, but ultimately went to Craw. Big part of that decision was actually because of Lego Rouge, who immediately after joining the Poly main server, he was just there and he showed me how to use the Elo bot and everything. Then we played a game together. I actually won that game. It made me feel pretty good that I won my first game. And then Arthur challenged me to my second game. I'm not going to talk about that one.
So you could have been on 3 different teams?
I was actually skipped over in my first draft and I joined as a free agent. So honestly, if I just reached out to any team recruiter, I doubt they would have said, no, we're not going to pick you up for 0 fat. Just seems a little silly, honestly. Yeah, I did have 4, maybe 5 Memories a Little Fuzzy teams reaching out about that time.
Let's go back to Craw. There's a coaching program. Is it really as good as some people say?
Yes, like 1,000 times, yes. Coaching is definitely like one of the best things about being on Craw. Because honestly, the reason I love the Craw team so much isn't because of, I don't know, the aesthetics or anything. It's just because of the people on there. It's not like I have any problems with anyone across anything on Polychamps. And it's not like I knew anyone going into Craw, but being there, it's just been a very welcoming environment where everyone's trying to help each other out. That applies to the coaching as well. When I was there, it was all really new to me, and a lot of the training documents that were used were made by other people in the community, not specifically Craw members, which was nice to see people working together in that way. They were kind of out of date when I joined, pre-Light the Manti and pre-Moonrise, and then they got even more out of date, especially with the first Balance Pass being released recently. There's this one part of one of the documents that talks about what to do when a whale spawns in your border as Kiku, which is completely useless now. Well, not really, because it's less about that specifically and more about why you should map out your turns and try to optimize outcomes. That specific scenario isn't going to happen anymore. One of the training documents actually included every tribe in the game, but it's so old that it doesn't even have Polaris. They're still very good. Even if they're old, they have a lot of really good insight there. They're supported by a wealth of knowledge from the pro players who you reach out to. Of course, if someone's burned out and they're not in the game, you're not going to be able to say anything to them. There are a lot of active pro players you can just talk to. Everyone's super approachable there. It's not like there's adversity. Hey, I'm sorry. You're a shrimp. You are beneath me. Get out of my sight. Everyone's really helpful in my experience. It's not like people are going to stop what they're doing 24/7 and help you out. But like people come back to you at reasonable times. And I think the people who are the coaches are the biggest asset. It's not like a magical process that like join the team. You are a terrible player and now you're a goat or anything. But if you put in the effort, they've got the resources there to make you a better player. And I've seen it happen to a lot of players there.
So the team aspect of mapping out and planning your terms would be your favorite part of being on the team?
Most of it's just talking with the other people on the team, like the conversations we get into. We're not like only playing Polytopia all the time. I'd consider a lot of people on there friends. So it's been nice like that. Feels like a team should, I guess. It's my favorite way to play Polytopia, to talk with people and map out turns and stuff. If the only thing I was doing in Polytopia was on the server, on Crawfish anyways, was just talking to other people about the game, like that would get old fast.
For the main server, you're in the tiny tournament too. Would you call yourself a big tournament lover, or just something you wanted to try because it's in main?
No, I am not a tournament lover. In fact, every time I've thought about how I joined there, I've regretted it because I've had no reason to. I don't know why I'm doing all of these. I don't know why I'm in Polymasters, why I'm in Polylive, the tournament aspect. I love being a commentator there. There are literally no downsides. I mean, aside from the time investment, I guess. I don't know why I'm in the tiny tournament. And I'm probably going to sign up for the bullet tournament as well.
But why?
Good question.
Why are you doing this interview?
So for Polymasters, like I was just reached out to and they asked me if I wanted to fill out the roster. So I said, sure, I'll do that. I like the competitive scene and I don't want to see it go out. There's only so much you can do as one person. It's not like me leaving would ruin the league or anything. Me being there certainly makes it better, I think. And then the same for the bullet tournament. I didn't participate in the first one, but then a friend of mine who did asked me to participate in the next one. And I'm like, okay, if you say so. For Polylive, I'm a commentator there. I kind of feel obligated to play there, especially after everything I've learned from watching them. I would like to win a few rounds there too, so get my commentator cred. Someone pulls into the game and they see me commentating, they're not dreading it. They're like, oh, it's okay. They won an entire one round. And then for the tiny tournament, again, another person I met on the Polytopia server was like, hey, you saw about the tiny tournament? And I'm like, yep, you should join it. And I'm like, okay. If you insist, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to play with you.
So you're saying all of the Polytopia community is just a giant peer pressure machine?
Yes. Well, really, it's only been like one person asking me to play. It's not like every single member of the Polytopia community has just been in my DM saying, join every tournament. There is a healthy amount of people asking each other to like just get involved. There's excitement around all these events. So that's been nice. Like the coaching on Polychamps, I just recently got involved with it because BD's stream wasn't working, and then they asked me to sub in for him. I was pretty busy that night, but I did it anyways. It is a time investment, but it's also fun, so there's that.
Do you have a favorite tribe?
Yeah, I mean, a few favorites, really. It's hard to pick one. On Polymain, I did set my tribe as Kiku, because there's a lot of Banu posting. I don't know what to say about it, the Banu posting culture, if you're not aware of it, if you're not familiar with what it's like. If you are, you already know, there's nothing for me to explain, but if you're not, it's kind of hard to talk about its appeal. Like, people will just go in the Kiku chat on Polymain and they'll post a Banu and then they'll leave. It's absolutely amazing. Sometimes I'll just look at those Banu walls and just think, yeah, and then I'll post my Banu and be on my day. It's just nice. It's like a little check-in. Doubting me if you're like, nah, you lost it. You're out of your mind. Banu posting? Come on. Just go on Polymain, set your tribe as Kiku. It doesn't have to be forever. A lot of people are only there for Banu posting and then they go back to a different tribe. And then you'll see, you'll feel it deep down. It will touch you, like, spiritually. Not physically, spiritually. Kiku was also the first tribe I ever bought, just because I wanted to get online play. Back when I bought it, I was a terrible player. I thought Imperius was better than pre-nerf Barter. Not like this nerf, but like the nerf before that. Yeah, I had no clue what I was doing. Actually, the order of tribes I went was, I first picked up the game and I got Jinji because I'm like, wow, they're like Chinese, that's cool. And I'm like, okay, let me try the other tribes. And I played Omaji and I'm like, oh, they've got riders, they can move further. Definitely better than Jinji. Also, best tribe in the game, I'm sure. These other guys, not a fan of them. Then I picked up the other two tribes and I'm like, wow, I was wrong again. I was just so wrong about so many things, so I'm really glad that I'm right about everything now. But anyways, for some reason, I knew that fishing would be a good early tech to have, just because of how it worked with being a turn 0 tribe. I wouldn't have used those terms, but I was like, yeah, fishing is nice. And it's like all of the reasons that Kiku had a competitive advantage were the reasons I got it, which is kind of startling, because I'm usually wrong about everything, but no, yeah, Kiku's a good tribe. But I also like Yadak, the road cult. Yadak's also a pretty popular tribe. I don't know what there is to say. It's kind of like Banu posting. I mean, it's just all aesthetics and stuff. Yadak doesn't really benefit my playstyle. I like to have a few cities, maybe enough for a network monument on like a normal 1v1 map kind of thing, which is not quite half the map. If you have 6 cities, but have very high level cities, get all the eco techs. Yeah, that is just all about expansion. I don't know, there's something about those roads, something about the Yadak music, something about the Yadak YouTube video that Midjuan posted. All of it, it just makes me say yes. So yeah, I'd consider myself a big fan of Yadak. And when Semanti came out, everyone was like dogging on them. They got so much hate. People were talking about, I don't want to play against Semanti. These guys, they're too busted. Ew, they're gross. Bugs? Stuff like that. Just bugs everywhere. I was digging them. People were like, nah, they're not good at water. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Richis are so cheap.
You have enough coastal cities. Otherwise,
yeah, of course. On Archipelago, good. Most of your city is going to be by the coast anyways.
Mm-hmm.
On lakes, you don't need a navy, probably. I played so many Semanti 1v1s. I would just say, hey, I'm trying to get some practice with Semanti. Another game I might touch on later. I played against Disco. He was Barter. It was a tiny Drylands map. I said I was trying to get some practice for the next Bullet tournament. This was after the last one had finished. And that was a while ago. Can't remember quite when. Very soon after Semanti had been added. There were only 4 cities on that game. which benefit me a lot as Semanti. I was just digging them. We got the Dumuxes. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm just going off and listing off everything that Semanti has and saying I like it. Like, if you know Semanti, you know the reason, you know the stuff they have. Just assume I like it from here on. But it's like, Mijuan tried to code the most busted, broken tribe into the game, and it wasn't broken enough, so he nerfed everything else. Which just put it in a league of its own. I know for this season on Polymasters, it literally is in its own tier.
Mm-hmm.
There are 4 tiers. You've got Aquarion, Jinji, and stuff in tier 4, Hudrick, post-nerf Lux, Polaris in tier 3. You've got the cool turn zeros, Barter, Imperious Kiku in tier 2. And then Semanti is the only tier 1 tribe. It's insane. I know it's not going to be the only balance. I'm not angry at Mijuan for trying to fix parts of the game, fix competitive balancing or anything. Don't get me misinterpreted or anything. Right now, as it is, Semanti super busted. Most of the games, if there are no bans, just expect like a Semanti mirror. Which, those are fun. I did a bunch of those. But there are so many more ways to play the game.
Semanti Waterworld versus Polaris?
Those are awful because it just becomes Semanti's just rushing out Reichis, doing a bunch of unit spam, and trying to get up as much algae as they can, because Reichis can just swim through algae, even if it's been frozen. And Polaris is just trying to put up as much ice as they can. Ugh.
And then they have the stuck centipedes until the ice comes further along.
Semanti's land units are so nice. That's something else. Talking about that kind of the gross situation. Semanti Polaris Waterworld. In VC on main with Zoe just talking about stuff. I forgot the reason he was there, but all I know is that Alfric was saying Among Us tribe. And Zoe Zoe, okay, he actually got Zoe to say, yes, Among Us tribe confirmed. The Polycraft server, that's because there's a Minecraft tribe coming.
What?
They talked about some of the Among Us units. We, of course, have the Imposter. You can build your vent monument where you can vent to their capital.
What? To the enemy capital or your capital?
The enemy capital.
What?
So, all I'm saying is, thank God he's not serious, I hope. No Among Us tribe.
Yeah, no.
I'm not emotionally ready for that.
That's also copyrighted.
This is gonna sound bad. But Zabasi is probably my favorite tribe to play right now. Probably because they're the strongest tribe other than Semanti.
Mm-hmm.
Also because I just picked them up and I just started playing with them, and it's like everything I wanted to do. Like, Barter has too many mountains, okay? If I wanted to play Barter competitively, I would just be way too tempted to get climbing when it made no sense to. Just because there are mountains everywhere. You can play competitive Barter with climbing into like swordsman and stuff. It's just that in most cases, math is probably the better option. I would just be way too tempted to just play terribly. But it's everything Zabasi is like, yeah, just do this. Just follow your instincts. It just works. I play the game well. Wow. Who knew this game could be so much fun?
Any comment for the Avenger or Quetzali?
I do own every tribe on Steam, right? But on mobile, where I play most of the games, I do not own those tribes, either of them. And every time I do say that, Speedy just thinks it's the funniest thing ever. I like to commentate with Speedy. We co-commentate on Poly Life together. I like it a lot. I think Speedy's a fan too. We get some nice compliments. Makes my heart swell like the Grinch 3 sizes. Inevitably, after the game is over, we'll just be hanging out in VC. And he's like, okay, you want to play a game? We're like, sure. We start playing a game. And he's like, Gear? And I'm like, oh, I don't have that tribe. laugh track will not stop laughing at me, just making fun of me for being broke. Like that, my heart shrinks back 5 sizes at least.
Well, if you bought Steam, how come you can't buy all the mobile tribes?
Good question. Hey, it's been a nice interview.
So your most memorable game you played wasn't against the Amogus tribe?
That one 4-city game I played against Disco, I liked that one a lot because both of our spawns were pretty awful. There were our capitals and there were 2 other cities on the entire map. We were just looking for cities the entire time. Disco went into my vision on like turn 3 and he had already bought climbing. So I was like, oh no, what's going on here? No, stop. That spawn can't be good. I know I buy climbing. I know I will talk about the virtues of climbing. The average Polytopia player, the normal person, someone who isn't a freak of nature like me, they are allergic to mountains, and for good reason, because there's a graph that shows how much you buy climbing and your win rate, and they are inversely proportional, 1-to-1. Every time you buy climbing, you lose 1 game. So seeing him do that, it was, wow, that's not a good start if you had to even consider that, like actually do it. But I was kind of expecting him to pull that, so I got to stay out of his vision for a bit, which was nice for me. So I was semantic going into it, and that did not stop him. The big thing I remember about it was the end of the game. He basically pushed his capital to max giant population. There was no way he could pull that off again. I had a boosted centipede. He had a giant protecting his capital, 1 tile off of it, and a warrior that he'd produced there, plus some other units. I just sent my hex pods, tore through those, and sent my centipede on there, and beached his capital. His giant was able to do 19 out of the 20 damage, and that was it. He DM'd me after, he was like, wait, you can still move 3 tiles even through my terrain? Because he'd gotten border growth on his capital, and I'm like, yes. That's when he resigned. Another good game was when I played against Astria on Polylive. That was not like a serious game for a season or anything. But Astria and I actually played a few games like this. Monlet, who's the head commentator over there, shoutouts to Monlet, all the love in the world to him, of course. He was just training a commentator, and he needed a game for them to commentate so he could hear what they did and maybe give them a critique, help them out a bit, put them on the righteous path. And this game was not the first Zeb mirror that I'd played against Astria for Poly Live, which, interestingly enough, I didn't like that game as much, the first one. Even though I won that one and I lost with this one. Spoiler alerts, everyone. I did have a whack jank spawn. I spawned very close to the corner with no cities in my back row. It's weird to think of there being a back row on Tiny, just because you're always spawning in the corner there. Still, no chance of a back row city. Had to expand closer to the middle or along the edge. And my only resource indicators were 2 empty forests as Zavasi in opposite directions. My closest village was 3 tiles away. But I was able to turn that game around. I had a 40 health giant on Astria's capital at one point. I was able to take some cities. There was a lot of back and forth there. Now, I am wondering if Astria intentionally threw any of that just for content, just to give them something to commentate. But it was a nice game. It ended because we both produced as many giants as we possibly could on the 7 cities on that map. Then Astria had knights and I didn't. Plus Astria had 4 cities to my 3 at that point.
How many games are you usually in at once?
I'm in 6 games where it's my turn right now.
So around 10, 15?
29 other games.
Most people tend to be either around 10 or 30, 40, which I find interesting.
Yeah, a lot of those games are random 1v1s. I opened a few FFAs as well on main. which they're not very thought intensive. Like, I do not have to think of very much or like plan out my turns before doing them, and I will still do fine. I've been very busy lately, so I've been trying to only, at most, have one random 1v1 going on main. The number of games keep piling up because I don't know what's going on with the main players or anything. And don't tell them I said this, but they've got this weird tendency that when they know they've lost, they start taking 24-hour long turns. And I'm like, I've got 50 stars per turn and knights and 50 giants on the board. They've got 2 cities and 1 giant, and their best military tech is archery. It's very clear who's going to win this game. I'm going to start another one. So a few of those games that have just been over and decided, probably half of my games at this point, are just going on like that. I don't know, I guess I'm going to call them zombie games. They're dead, but not at the same time. And I just start another one, and the same thing happens there. We'll be playing back and forth very quickly, 5-minute turns and stuff, and they're like, oh, I'm losing, a lot. And then boom, it turns into a zombie game.
Mm-hmm.
If I am losing a game, I'll try to just lose it quickly. Pro tip for all your elo gains: when you're losing, you want to log your losses before your wins. That way, when you win more, and when you lose less. It kind of defeats the purpose of being an accurate reflector of what you're doing if you're doing stuff outside of just your gameplay to do that and have a higher number, but honestly, who cares?
Wait, not even team recruiters care about elo?
If you are not a good team recruiter, I don't mean throw shade or anything. Well, I guess I'm not going to name anyone specifically because I haven't been paying attention to team recruiters to do that. I forgot the team who did this, but they recruited a player who had been inactive for several weeks just because they had the highest elo of all the draftable people.
Oh no.
Yeah, if you are not a good team recruiter, you look at one number and say, okay, that's who I want on my team. Honestly, if you can joke with that person and they make you laugh, I want them on the team. It doesn't matter what their elo is. That's why we coach people. If they are open to talking about the game, sharing their thoughts, they can communicate. If there's someone I would like to hang out with, I'm more than happy to put them on the team. Which is probably good that there are other recruiters who are not like that. It helps us balance it out. We all come together on a very nice consensus about who to draft, though. There's not going to ever be one number that can define a person. We've been trying a long time, and every single one has failed. People are more complex than that.
But what if someday scientists will figure out how the human brain works and we can simplify it to a simple computer program?
In the case that happens, I'd like to see it scientifically tested, I suppose. I'd like to see it demonstrate reality, like this one person has the bigger number, that they actually do perform better in, I don't know, whatever it's measuring. And if so, I'm definitely not getting any measurement nah from me. Nah out of 10.
But what if the technology is also applied to which Polytopia tribe is actually the best for which map types, what map sizes, and all the other variables?
We already know this. It's Zabasi normal drylands.
But what about Cymanti?
What about Cymanti?
You were just going on about how they were the best tribe.
Yeah, but Zabasi. I think I've made my case.
Well, I liked Zabasi before all the other tribes were nerfed.
I had a friend who liked the Zabasi a lot. They changed to Luxador when they bought Luxador. I wonder why that happened.
And then Luxador got nerfed.
Okay, all the forestry tribes, like Hoodrick, they weren't the best before. They had something going for them. Poor Hoodrick. Barter, Kiku, yeah, it's been hard for us in the Kiku bungalow on Maine. But
You can't
Luxador, ugh. Yeah, I don't know. I should say this, but Luxador on suicide watch right now.
But last Rook checked, they're still the biggest tribe server.
Wasn't that Illyrion?
No, it's Kiku.
It is now? Ah, yeah.
It's
The
been
last time
Kiku
I
for
saw
a
anything.
while.
Woo! Let's go! Yeah, the last time I saw anything about that, it was when Bush checked. And said Illyrion was slightly larger than Kiku. Yeah, let's go. I am part of the Kiku bungalow, so I'm a fan of that news. Not only the biggest, but also the best tribe, Kiku. Forget what I said about Zabasi, forget about Savanti, Kiku.
And forget about whales spawning inside your borders.
Yes. One of the other posts that we would do, besides the new posting, was also custom houses. So custom houses, those are unaffected. It's like surround a custom houses emoji with 8 ports. But the other thing we would do is 9 whales together, which it's sad now because we can only have 4. Well, I guess 5 if you align them. It's like can't touch anymore either.
Last question. What's your favorite part of the Polytopia Discord?
I spend most of my time in the team game channels. Yeah, I guess I'd have to say that just hopping in there. If someone's posted something in there, I'm on it. Like it very much. Big fan. It's unfortunate that there's just not enough space to archive all of the game channels on main. Honestly, even if there was, a lot of that stuff would be kind of boring to look over. I don't know about anyone else. I can only speak for myself here, but even though they've got the season games archived on Craw, there's not a chance that I am looking over those. That's incredibly boring.
But it's a part of history.
I know, and I've seen people talking about the black market for archives and stuff, and how like teams would trade archives, and I'm like, are you kidding me? People actually want to look at this stuff?
Teams trade archives? I didn't know that.
Illegally.
Ah.
Like someone's planning on transferring, they hate the team. Illegal archive stealing. Screenshot everything. I don't think it's a very big thing, but I have heard it happen a few times.
Well, that's what started the whole profit scandal.
Yeah,
Setting
Bar
stuff.
Do It Up. Bar Do It Up is before my time. I just saw it and I'm like, of course, it's a very nice portmanteau of Barter and Kiku. If you're on like an archipelago map and you're playing as Barter, which for like week 2 it seemed like most teams with the point totals there favored something like Quetzali or like Aquarion, Barter, and Kiku for archipelago. Well, of course, if you're going to use Kiku strats with Barter, it's called Bardu. What else would it be? That's just a really nice name. Yeah, Bardu it up. It just sounds fun and exciting. Like the people on Craw, like the senior members, they were all very serious about nobody saying Bardu it up. If someone said that, they would be like, no, stop. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're messing with. Seeing where it came from and everything, I'm gonna be real, I just think it's kind of funny saying Bardu it up. I will respect the people who don't want me to say, yeah, we're gonna Bardu it up in game channels or anything. I get giddy. There's some glee I take. Some joyful glee I get whenever I say Bardu it up. It just makes me feel good. Some people struggle with other addictions, right? At least I'm not addicted to vitamins or something. Chasing the dragon of the first time I said Bardu it up. It still makes me feel good. It's just not the same as the first time I said it, or like the first time I found out it was bad.
That's all the questions I had.
Cool. Thank you for having me. Zablossi is the best tribe in the game. See ya.
Bye. As always, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, feel free to share it. For the text version, you can join my Discord in the description. I also have a YouTube channel where I play 1v1s and occasionally do tutorials. We'll be back next week.
Bye.